The coronavirus has claimed its latest victim, the Big Ten football season. Conference officials and college presidents have decided to shelve college football Saturdays and traditions in favor of preserving players' and coaches' health. However, the decision to axe the football season this fall hasn't been met with unanimous consent, with several players and coaches petitioning online and the league to reconsider their decision. Harold Shelton III is the manager of research for the Big Ten Network. He joined me this week to dive deeper into the subject. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Despite the pushback the conference has received as a result of making this decision, Shelton believes they made the right call.
As a fan, it's disappointing because I love college football. I love, Saturdays in the fall and that anticipation. As someone who's covered college football for almost 14 years now, it's been a big part of my life, having the Saturdays, uh, for 14, 15 weeks. And so much of our content is based on that, and so much of my life is based on that. But I think it was the right thing to do, to at least postpone it. I'm glad they didn't cancel it completely. I'm really not sure exactly how a spring season would work, but at least they're still keeping that option open. I just feel like at this point, I know there's definitely a passion for it, but I just don't know how you could do it safely. College campuses, you have, 40, 50,000 people. I don't see how you can keep them from going out to bars and going out to clubs, or just, hanging out, not social distancing. There's a lot of places that still aren't wearing masks. And then you want these athletes to basically play knowing all of that. Even if they're doing the right things, all it takes is for, a couple of those people who went to the bar to go to class with one of those athletes, they spread it, and then you get a situation like North Carolina has on its campus. I just think it's not safe to do it at this point.
And what do you think about the players' online positions, specifically Justin Fields, and then the coaches that have spoke out against the decision to postpone the season?
I think it's cool that Justin Fields is doing this. I feel like he realizes that he has a lot of power in his position, being a Heisman Trophy candidate on a team that would have been no worse than top 3 in the country to start the year. Obviously, the biggest brand and the biggest football brand in the Big Ten, Ohio State. I just think that, I appreciate his passion. I appreciate the passion of the players who have put so much into it and really want to play. But sometimes when you're 18 to 22, you might not know exactly what's best for you, even though you think you know what's best for you. A lot of times adults will have to step in and make an unpopular decision, a decision you might not like, but what I think will prove to be ultimately the right one. And so while I appreciate what he's done, and appreciate, the outreach that he has, I just don't think playing it in the fall is smart right now.
And now, what do you think about the other 3 Power Five conferences that haven't postponed or said that they're going to go ahead with the season? Do you think the Big Ten made the decision too quickly, or what do you think about the whole landscape of college football as a whole?
Well, I think that the fact that the SEC and the Big 12 both figured that they would start later in September, I think gives them a little bit more time to see if anything progresses, to see if cases drop a little bit, see if there's a way to control the virus more on campus. So I think the SEC was starting, the end of September, and the Big 12 was the week before that. So they still have a little bit of time, a little over a month to try to get things figured out. The Big Ten was supposed to start on September 3rd, so they had to make their decision before actually starting a full fall camp. So I think that's part of the reason why the Big Ten pulled the plug as quickly as they did. I'm not surprised that the Pac-12 did as well. One thing I do wish is that we saw with the Pac-12, they got out in front of it and they released a lot of medical information saying, hey, this is why we're doing it. These are the effects. Everything seemed to kind of be in lockstep. And with the Big Ten, you're hearing leaks about the vote. You're hearing, AD saying that, well, I don't really know if there was an official vote at all. Questions were asked to the commissioner and there weren't exactly concrete answers from it. So it seems like the fact that the message isn't consistent with everybody, I think is upsetting a lot of the people. If there was just one consistent message from all the presidents, all the chancellors, and the commissioner, I don't think we'd see as much pushback as we're having.
And do you think the fact that there's a fairly new commissioner of the conference played into this decision at all in terms of his wanting to sort of make a quick decision versus whether Jim Delaney still was running the conference at all? Do you think in terms of leadership that played a difference at all or not?
I don't think so. I don't think the longevity part has anything to do with what his decision was. I do think that his longevity or lack thereof could be a reason why people are pushing back toward him. The fact that Delaney was the commissioner for 30 years and he kind of ruled it with an iron fist, I feel like people kind of, even if they didn't like the decision, they just say, well, this is what it is, and we'll just move forward. With, Commissioner Warren being in year one on the job, I feel like people are kind of pushing back against him a little bit more because we don't really know his demeanor and his decision-making. But for the basketball tournament, he was the first Power 5 guy to cancel, the conference tournament. And, everyone kind of followed those footsteps once he canceled. So I don't think I think he just listened to like the task force that he has. I think he listened to the president's decisions and just decided, hey, you know what? We're just going to pull the plug on this now instead of, kicking the can down the road a week. Okay, nothing happened. We'll kick it down the road another week. Nothing happened. They just say, you know what? We'll just pull the plug now and try to figure out a way to do this in the spring.
And certainly with college football, it's different than the NFL or any other major sport because you need the fans and the revenue to sustain the season. And without many students on campus to start the year, I can only imagine you think that played into the decision as well.
Yeah, I think like for the NFL, it'll probably be a lot easier to do it just because you don't have to worry about, the 53-man roster being around a bunch of 18 and 22-year-olds all sharing the same space. A lot of them can still be at their homes and then go to the facility and go back. But when you're on campus and you're 18 to 22 and you're out partying, you're out drinking, you're out having a college experience, having a good time, even if you're trying to do your best to stay isolated and stay quarantined and do everything you can to have a season, other people are still going to live their college lives. And just because you're doing the right thing doesn't mean that others are. And once those two groups intersect, you get outbreak. And so I just feel like it's just so much harder for college to do that.
Now, we looked at the potential of playing in the spring and whether there'll be a vaccine yet or not. So I know you mentioned earlier that they didn't outright cancel the potential for a spring season, but do you think that'll ultimately happen?
I'll be really curious to see what it looks like. It seems like there's a lot of people, smart football people, people who have played it, people who have coached, who are very, very skeptical about it happening. But just because they're skeptical doesn't mean it's impossible. I just think it's one of those things where we haven't seen it before, so we don't know what it looks like. So we just automatically assume, oh, there's no way it can happen. I do think if you're going to do it, you probably have to push the start of the 2021 season back to allow the bodies to kind of reset, rest, recuperate after a tough 2020 season. And I think you probably have to have abbreviated seasons for both. I don't think you could have a 12-game season for 20 and for 21. It might be, two 10-game seasons, or maybe an 8-game and a 10-game season, something like that, in order for it to work. But I wonder if you started in March, you end in late May, maybe start 21 in October or so. If you have 4 or 5 months in between, would that be enough? I'd be curious to see what it looks like. And hopefully, once the Big Ten presidents and stuff get together on that, we'll get some more answers on that.
And if there is a spring football season, do you think it'll be a race against the clock to try and get the draft in relatively at the same time that it would usually happen? And do you think marquee players would be less likely to play a spring season in because they're afraid of injury at all?
Yeah, I think that's a huge, huge issue. The fact that there's a lot of players. I mean, even now we saw people who didn't want to play in the season because of all the uncertainty just opting out and saying, I'm going to declare for the draft. So I think you'd see that even more now. I do wonder if you're a player like Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence and you have a chance to win a national title, maybe that carrot is enough to have you play. It seemed like Fields and Lawrence still wanted to play knowing that they were going to be, high first-round picks. When that calendar turns to, March and April, if there still isn't a season left, would they still feel the same way knowing that $1 million is around the corner? That I'm not so sure, but I do think that the season would definitely look a little different because you wouldn't have as many of the, Alabama players or LSU players. If there's teams that have 8 to 10 guys who are draft eligible, I wonder how many of them will actually play a full season. My guess is probably less than half, but again, that's just a guess.
And then Shelton concluded his remarks by reflecting upon how the virus has fundamentally changed the future of college football and how the college football playoff may be affected if the 3 remaining conferences who are still contemplating the future of their 2020 fall playing season can navigate away onto the field.
That's a really good question. I know a lot of the safety protocols that have been put in place, I think, could just help in life in general. I mean, we've seen just a lot of things become more clean. So if the locker rooms, if the equipment, if they're taking the extra precautions to make everyone safer in general in life, hopefully that also will translate to football as well. On a contact sport like football, I don't really know how much you can do to prevent people from, sweating on each other for 3 hours. It's just kind of the way it is. But I'd be curious, especially for the visiting team, when you finish a game and you have to go in the locker room and you have to shower, or do you go, in waves of 10 while the other group sits in the stands and waits? Those kind of protocols is what I'm curious to see. If the ACC, SEC, Big 12 do decide to play football in the fall, we might get some answers on that earlier than later. If they push it all back, which I think they should do, we probably won't know those things until, closer to 21. But I do think that the virus is going to impact the way that we live our lives and the way we watch our sports and the way that the sports are played. I don't think it would be too dissimilar. I mean, for the most part, it seems like the committee loves the South to begin with. There's Ohio State kind of broke the streak or the drought for Big Ten teams, at least, because 17 and 18, the Big Ten was left out. Pac-12, they had Washington get in. I believe it was 2016, but they haven't had a team since then. So, if Alabama and Clemson and LSU and all those teams are still in Oklahoma, if they're all still in the mix, I think the playoff will be fine. Just trying to keep, those same, same group of teams in there. It hasn't really been an inclusive list of schools to begin with. So I don't think it would change it too much.
Well, name brand sell on college football, right?
Exactly.
Harold, I know we share some Detroit roots, so I really appreciate you hopping on this interview with me this afternoon and sharing your thoughts on the future of college football. Thanks so much for being here this afternoon. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.